Okay, people were asking me to show a few tips in Painter and how to ink, and I won't be doing a full illustration on YouTube. The reason why is I like to do my illustrations in real time, and a lot of videos that you see on YouTube are done sped up, and it gives people a false impression on how much time they should be spending on a drawing, and I don't want people to think that's the way to go. So what I want to do is show you some techniques to start off. And then, of course, if you want to see me finish these drawings, I'll be happy to, live stream them, which will actually happen before this tutorial goes up. But anyway, let's cut to the chase here. So, a lot of people look at Painter and they wonder, well, there's a lot of brushes in here, and what am I gonna do? So, we're going to start off first with understanding something very important in Painter, which is brush tracking. And you might see me use this a few times because sometimes Camtasia aborts my brush tracking, so I have to redo it to get it to work again. Which Camtasia is the recording software that I'm using for these demos. So, I brought up a blank canvas here, and I'm going to minimize this real quick. And I'm going to talk about like the different styles of inking. Sometimes you want something like, for example, this particular cute illustration. You might want to do something that's a little more soft kind of inking instead of real flat and hard. And something like this might lend to a more flat, hard line, something similar to like Adam Hughes. And then maybe sometimes you want to ink something that's a little more technical, like this truck here. So again, let me bring this back out, and we're going to go over some of the brushes. Now there's the ballpoint pen, which I have here already, which is looks kind of scratchy right now. So I want to show you a little trick in Painter, and this may affect the performance of my my strokes as well. But when you're using Painter regularly without the recording, this will help make your strokes look a little bit better. So I'm waiting for the performance dialog to come up. Okay. Under performance, you'll see the view options, and you want to smooth objects when zooming, so check that on and hit OK. And already you can see a difference between what it looked like a minute ago, which is a little more raggedy. And this kind of pen might be the kind that you want for that kind of soft edge ink I was mentioning earlier. So there's also another way that I particularly like making a pen, and that's going into the pencils and using the cover pencil. By default, you can see the cover pencil is like this, and I'm going to reset it just to make sure that I'm getting the proper cover pencil. And I think this is like near perfect. I like the line in it, but there's certain things like maybe you don't want it to be this gray when you're inking. So I'm going to show you how you adjust this. So what you do is Command B for Mac users or Control B for Windows users, and that brings up the brush controls. And if you've seen my previous tutorials, you'll notice that I've got mentioned that this is pretty large. So the other way to also bring it up is to use the brush control panels right here. So anyway, there's two ways to deal with this. In Painter, there's all these categories. And this category, grainy soft cover, means it's going to respond to paper grain like this in your drawing. And you can have raw silk or something really smooth, or you can have something really rough in the paper textures. And since that's something that we don't really want unless you're doing a certain kind of inking, we're going to turn this off for the moment. So we're going to just go to soft cover. And now again, I'm still getting something what I kind of like, but maybe I don't want the opacity. So you want to start playing with the settings. So if I don't want it as gray, I can mess with the opacity and set it to none. And now I've got this pen that's going to pretty much stay at the same 58% opacity. Now if that's still too low, you can always ramp this up a bit. I'm going to ramp it up to 75. And now I've got a firm inking line. That looks almost black and just a little bit fuzzy because I kind of like it that way. So I'm going to clear this out real quick. So you can see that kind of line I've produced. Now if you want to save it, what you want to do is bring up this brush control and go to Save Variant. And I'm going to rename this Cutie. And here in the brush category, you can save it under here, but if you like keeping frequently used brushes, you can save it to a custom brush category, which one way to do it is to add a new one. I have my own, so I'm going to save it here. And it's already telling me that it exists because I had done this earlier, so I'm just going to tell it yes to replace it. And now when I go to my custom brush area, which is this cute little icon here, it'll be in this area, Cutie Soft Inking Pen. So now I have that pen there. And if you want to know how to create like your custom icon and stuff, it's in my YouTube tutorial on how to make a Photoshop style brush. So I've got that one. Now let's go back to pens. And there's quite a few pens in the category. There's a smooth ink pen, which kind of has a flat point. It's what they call a rendered dab. It's a particular dab that's already in Painter's brush categories. And this is a nice flat stroke, which some people like. You can also change things like the size, and if you want the minimum size to be really small, you just change it to 0, and then you got a pen like this. Now the other brush that's very much like this is the Scratchboard tool, which is actually another favorite of mine. A lot of people use this one for regular inking, and I'm going to delete this out. And by default, it's pretty much, you know, a really nice brush, and I would actually recommend this if you were going to do a thick style inking. Where you may also want to make sure that your brush tracking, as I've said earlier, is set. So if it seems that the line isn't as responsive, just make a few strokes in brush tracking. And there's your inking pen right there. And I've already saved it. I usually put my initials in front of any kind of variant that I've saved, so it's easier for me to track. And the second thing I do is to reset this tool so that it doesn't have my preferences in it, so that in case I want to make another brush, I can always reset it. And the reset tool's right here. Another interesting pen is the thick and thin pen, which looks like it's in the same family as the Scratchboard tool. But if you were going to use this because for some reason you think it's better than the Scratchboard tool, one of the things I would advise you to do is to turn the opacity off. And now this is going to make it another flat pen. So I've reset it again just to go back to its default. Here's some other kind of pens in here that I've also liked. There's calligraphy pens, which is really cool. If you're trying to do a dry brush, like rainy, which can be good for certain kinds of effects that you're doing in Painter. And if this gets messy, I select all and I delete it out. You can see that I just did my initials with this kind of pen. We'll do another one here, calligraphy brush. Which is more smooth and water, kind of like watery. Let's see. Did that one. These two are similar. Let's go to the dry ink pen just for a moment. Come on. And you got a dry ink pen right here. If you want some real fun effects. And I'm trying to remember some of these, like we have the liquid ink category. There's also other kinds of graphic effects if you're trying to do inking. It's a smooth one. And then you have the smooth flat. Smooth knife using the palette knife, which is a very wide point. So if you're trying to get like wide areas inked in real fast, this is a good pen. Then we have the resist, and I just wanted to show you real quick, when you're using liquid inks, by the way, it creates its own layer, so it's not going to be in the same layer as your other pens. And resist actually ends up like wearing down areas so ink can't come in, and you can see how it causes like an erosion. So that's really cool for some other effects that you're looking for. Just like a camel hair has that nice little bristly look to it. And anyone that's a resist brush again. Like a sparse bristle resist. It creates erosion in the ink, so it's pulling the ink away. And I believe it's a little bit harder to put ink back on. Let's double check here just to show. Oh, in this case it's not as bad. But you'll notice that where the resist pen was at, it's showing. So it just takes a little bit to refill it. And I'm going to delete this. Okay, so now you've seen like me create like a couple of brushes, which was the cover pencil set to no opacity, and I ramped up the opacity itself, so it's not at 100%. You can put it at 100%. It's just up to you. And that kind of brush will create a soft edge. And if you want to access your brushes that you use quickly, you can just ramp it up here. And another thing I'd like to mention too is like, we'll just say we're going to save this variant. If you want to keep it so that your inking pens always stay at 100% black, which is on the RGB scale 000, you can tell it to save current color. And in that way, every time you bring up that brush, it's automatically going to be black. You can change it, but I believe like once you switch back to it, it's going to switch back to black. And that's kind of handy in case you're inking and you realize, oh wait, I don't I want to make sure I'm using black, so that's what save current color is for. So then now we're going to talk about, you've got a drawing and you want to ink it in Painter. How do we get about doing that? So for example, I'm going to take this little lizard man here, and I'm going to show you how I do this. There's several different ways. Some people do this method where they go over to this flyout menu, and let me see if I can move this over for a second so that the flyout menu acts a little better. They'll use this one, which I would be alright with it, except for the fact that I'm not really I don't like it turning to watercolor. So, but you can do that and bring it down a little bit. You can also change the color by going to Effects and Tonal Control and adjust the colors. And if you want to commit to an image layer, just go ahead and tell it OK. So I'll ramp up the saturation and start messing with these three controllers to change the hue of the drawing. So that looks okay. This green. And now you've got your ink like that. That's the quickest way to do it. Only reason I kind of don't like doing this is because usually if I didn't commit it to an image layer, it would tell me it's watercolor. So that's method 1. Method 2 is select all, which is Control A or Command A, Control C, which is copy, and Control V, and that'll duplicate this, but this will leave this on the canvas. So if you don't want it, you can hit Control A and then you can hit backspace or delete, and it'll clear out your canvas. So there's the two methods. So either way works for you. We're going to go back to this little lizard guy here for a second. And let me see if I can move these panels over. And let's take a look at how you can ink. And another setup I'd like to mention is that now that Painter has this navigator, you can rotate your canvas by using the sliders here. And this button resets it. And this one is the zoom, so you can bring it in and out. Or you can hotkey what you need to do. In Painter, the hotkey for rotation, I believe, is the E button. So once you bring your stylus up, and if you hit E, it'll allow you to rotate. And if you hit E again, it should rotate back to start. I can't remember if it's a double click or E. I believe it's double clicking. So on my tablet, I have rotate on here, but it's rotate and brush. So if I go counterclockwise, it'll bring up the rotate tool, and double clicking will reset it to center. And if I go clockwise, it'll bring out the brush tool. So that's really handy, so I can go back and forth with rotation and stuff. The other tool I have is zooming, so I can come and zoom in. And I'll just show like a couple of strokes using the Scratchboard tool. And as I've said before, Painter has a habit of aborting my preferences, but before I assume that's the case, there's also a hotkey that I have on my tablet with the back switch of the stylus, which will switch to Control plus Alt And if you drag this up and down, you can adjust the size on the fly. And now I got a pretty thick line going on in Painter. Some people like to do the strokes real fast. I don't mind taking my time at a certain speed. And sometimes, you want to fill in multiple strokes to help swap, depending on how thick you want your line. And you can see this is a real flat line, so depending on how you want to use this particular line or this particular brush, whether it's appropriate for a drawing like this, or if you want something that's a little softer. And as you can see here, that's how it looks at regular size. So with this one, I'm going to bring this down a little bit. And again, ramp up the saturation just to You can also do this through channels. It just depends on your preference. Nothing wrong with that. So this looks okay for me. And I create another layer. And I'm going to zoom in. And instead of using the Scratchboard ink, because it's pretty heavy, you can kind of see how it looks there. Even at a smaller brush size, it doesn't quite seem appropriate for this kind of drawing. You can see how thick the line is. Go with the soft inking pen. And now you can see like that looks a little more appropriate for this particular kind of drawing. It's a little soft and organic. And of course, the resolution and size of your drawing may also matter if you have to upscale the drawing. Undo. So now you can see how that looks a little softer and more organic for this character. So anyway, I hope that gives some people some ideas. And again, I'm willing to show people how I work on them fully in live stream. And thanks again for watching.